Hello, this is Dora Tarver from CreateAndManageSchedules.com. Welcome to your video coaching session. Now in this section, we're going to focus on managing overallocated resources. There are a couple of techniques that you can use to deal with when you have overallocated resources in your project schedule. So let's get started. Hello, now we're going to go through resource management, managing overallocated resources. Now, when you're going to level your resources, which is what we call managing your resources so that people who are not working enough or working enough and people who are working too much are working less. So when you go to level your resources in your project schedule, you will find that this will have a direct impact in the project's tasks and milestones and ultimately impact the finish date. So be very conscientious of the changes that you're making, and if you formatted your schedule with a critical path, you'll be able to see how the changes are affecting your project end date. Now, when you go to level resources, one of the first things you might want to do, and this is an optional thing, is insert the priority column in Microsoft Project and then assign a priority number in the priority column. Now, if you are going to use Project to automatically level resources for you, Project, if you have it configured properly, which I walk you through in the homework document, will use the priority column in its calculation of the resource leveling process that it goes through. But if you weren't using the project to automatically calculate or level your resources for you, you can also use the priority column just to help you to intuitively see what you can change in your project schedule. So how you would do that is when you insert the priority column, you would make you would assign numbers to tasks, and the lower numbers would be lower priority and they would be delayed first. So let's take a look at Project and see what I mean about that. Okay, so here's a project schedule, and if you were going to manually level your project schedule, what I was recommending is if you insert by right-clicking and inserting a column called the priority column, if you hit the letter P and scroll down in this list, you'll see priority. The priority column by default will be set to 500, but this number can be anywhere between 1000 and 1. Okay, and again, typically lower numbers mean lower priority, higher numbers mean a higher priority. And what that ultimately means is that a higher priority task would not be delayed or split. So when you go to level your task, when your resources in your project schedule, ultimately you're going to need to either split tasks or delay tasks. But if you have certain tasks that are higher priority, that means you don't want to delay them. You need to get them done sooner. And by setting up this column, it'll just act as a cue to visually help you remember which tasks are the priority tasks and which are less of a priority. Okay. Now, as I was saying, you'll either delay tasks or split tasks when you level your project schedule. And delaying a task basically means that you're pushing out the task finish date until the assigned resource has time to actually work on that task. If you split a task, the task will begin at one point in time, and then there'll be a gap in the period of time when it's not being worked on, and then it begins to be worked on again. So let me show you how that looks in Microsoft Project. So let's say I have a task here, And let's display, let me hide the priority column for now because I need to use the screen real estate. Okay, so I have a task here, and this task is going from June 4th to June 15th, and I have some resources assigned to it already. But let's say I need to use a resource for something else. I can split this task, and in Project there are a couple of ways to do that. You can literally select the task like we have here, and then click on the split task toolbar button right here. And what you see here is a pop-up window that says click the mouse to insert a split on the task. So now that we've clicked on this button, we go over to the task, and as you move over the task, you can see that the dates are changing, so you can see where you are, and you can determine where you want to split the task. So let's say we just pick a date, let's say June 9th. We click here, and Project has now split the task. Okay, now let me click undo for a second. So this task is 8 days in duration, and click redo. It's still 8 days here, and what we're going to do in terms of duration, we're going to, if we want to extend this split to a further period of time, you simply click on the task that you want to move out and drag it. And as you drag it, again, you can see the dates changing as I drag it, and then you can place it in a new location. All right, and now that has pushed out the finish date for this task. That's one way to do this. Let me hit undo so I can return back to where I was. Now, the other thing we can do, as I mentioned, is we can actually use the delay task feature. And if you go to the task entry view, you can either click on the toolbar task entry view from your resource management toolbar, or you can go to more views and then select task entry. Okay, either when the screen is now split, to turn the split off, you would simply go to Windows and select Remove Split, and then you have your Gantt chart back again. Or you can go to the Resource Management view and click Task Entry. Now, from the Task Entry view, you can delay a task by selecting that task, and when you select a task, it'll show down below. Below we have the Resource Schedule view. That's the lower half of this. If you right-click, you can see what you're looking at. It's a Resource Schedule view. We have a combination of the Gantt view and Resource Schedule view. So when you click on a task, you'll see below the Resource Schedule view details. So for the task that we just split, let's just say we didn't split it, but instead we delayed it. And so right now, how you would do that is you can select days for how long you want to delay that. Let's say we want to delay it 3 days for some reason. Okay. Now what we're doing is we're delaying this resource from starting for 3 days. And when I click on OK, watch what happens up here. I click on OK, and the finish date now moves out to the 18th, and this task has now been pushed out 3 days. Okay, and that's visible through this split. So when you are leveling your schedule, you'll ultimately be creating delays or splitting tasks. And one other detail to know in Project is that all of the resource views show you where you have over-allocated resources by highlighting them in red. And where we see that is, let me go to Window, remove the split. Now this isn't a resource view, this is a Gantt view, but if I go to the resource sheet, I can see these resources in red. They are over allocated. If I scroll down and select the resource usage view, again I see the resource names in red that are over allocated. If I go to more views, select resource graph, click apply, all of the resources in here who are over allocated will appear red on the graph. So if I have to scroll through here, let me see if I can find one really quickly for you. Okay, here we go. So this resource is over allocated, and that's in red. So wherever in Microsoft Project, whenever you're looking at a resource view, it'll help you know if those resources are over allocated because they will appear red. Now, once you have red resources and you want to level them, there are a few ways to do that. And one is using Project to do it for you, which, by the way, I go through in detail in the homework in a separate piece of paper with images to help you do that if you want to use Project. Or if you go into the resource usage view, this is a common way that I go if I'm working with a resource. So let's say we choose a resource that's over allocated. I'm actually in our next lesson going to show you some of the tools available to help you quickly go through this this view, but just for this particular lesson, let me show you from the resource usage view. I would insert a start column so I can see when these tasks are starting. And the reason I'm doing that is because over here on the right hand side I have a timeline, and currently my timeline is showing months and weeks. So if I right click here, select timeline, it's showing me weeks and days. So I see the month and the week starting on the 28th. Okay, and if I wanted to show the top tier, I could show all three tiers, and in the top tier show the month, which is kind of repetitive, but you know, you can play with the timeline and see and display what you want to see here. Let me actually turn the top tier off. Okay. So now that I have my start column here, I can go to the first date that this resource is working. Actually, so I see the first date here actually is June 4th, 2009. So if I go down to the bottom and scroll backwards, I can see a little pop-up window that's showing me the date as I scroll. I'm going to go back to June 4th. Okay, here we go. Oops. Okay, so here we are. Let me actually scroll down. So he's at the top. And now in my project timeline, under Tools, Options, I've set the calendar. We have the standard working day as 8 hours. It's a 40-hour work week, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So if anyone is working more than 8 hours, then they'll be over allocated. And if I simply scroll now to the right until I come across a red column, then I can see where he's over allocated. Now notice as I was scrolling, some of the days he's under allocated, quite a few actually. So I can reassign him the over allocated time to days where he's under allocated. In this case, on Wednesday, he's working 11.85 hours, and he's working on these tasks. So what I would do is actually take one of these tasks, like this one, and put the 3.85 hours in the day before, and then change this old task to a 0. Now the reason why those dialog boxes popped up is because we have constraints in the project schedule. If we go back, actually let me insert the column for the name, actually. Not the name, the ID. Okay, so this is actually task 12. And if we go back, if I hit undo, I want to show you something really quickly. Oops, it moved it all the way back. Sorry about that. Let me go back. Okay, now if I go back to the Gantt chart view and look at task 12, I can see this resource is assigned here. And notice that there's a predecessor relationship here. It's saying that this task can't start until the previous task ends. So when I'm in my resource usage view, and let me go back to that task. Here we go, right here. When I go to move this to an earlier day, what Project does is it warns me that the time-phased edit will cause the start before, will cause this task to start before the other task ends. Now, because I'm working in a template, I call them all add tasks, but you would actually see your task names here. And as a result, the task link cannot be honored. So I just click on OK, continue, keep time phase edit, and ignore the link. Okay, and then I write 0 in here. Now, that may be true. You'd have to think through the logic of your schedule. You might just want to, if there's a predecessor like that, instead of accepting it, you can then move his hours to another day. So let's say we scroll forward and we look for a day in the future when he's not over allocated. And it looks like pretty much every day going forward he's over allocated for a while. But what you would do is you would keep going forward. If you couldn't start the task sooner, and you'd keep going forward into the future until you find a day like this day where he can perform that task. Okay, and then you would put in the hours for that task in this day, and that makes this day a day when he's working on that task. Now this is a fairly tedious way to walk through the overallocated resources. And you may find, as I talk about in the paper that's part of the homework, that if you have a resource working less than 8 hours, that they still appear red. And in the paper I go through how you can fix that. But using the resource usage view, you can scroll through and see which resources are overallocated. Again, by selecting that resource, I would position them at the top, and then literally as you're scrolling through, you can see who's overallocated. Now, in our next lesson, I'm going to actually show you a tool that will speed this up. But in the meantime, go ahead and start to manually change things. Notice that if you have an overallocated resource, if you come across a situation where you change their overallocation and it still appears red, make a note of that. And I talk about that in the homework. So let's go back to the homework page. And basically what I want you to do is, the homework is one assignment, but there's a lot of detail in it. There's a paper that I've attached called Resource Leveling 2. It's called Resource Leveling 2 because I already created Resource Leveling 101 in e-projectmanagers.com VIP. And anyway, you can access the Resource Leveling 102, read that paper, and follow what it's saying in terms of how to configure Microsoft Project to automatically level for you. Okay, now a lot of people are afraid to use Project to automatically level. You go to the tools bar and you select level resources, and then you can literally click on level now and have Project automatically level it. But before you do this, there are a few steps that you need to be aware of, and I talk about those details in this paper. So go ahead and take a look at that. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Okay, so now go ahead and take a look at the homework below. It's a paper that I'd like you to read and actually try and implement the techniques that you see there. It walks you through how to use Microsoft Project to automatically level resources for you if you choose to take that path. In next week's lesson, we're going to show you the tools, additional tools that are in Microsoft Project that actually step you through what I just showed you this week, but in a much faster way. So I look forward to seeing you next week, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I'm more than happy to assist you. Please open a ticket at ineedsupportplease.com. Thank you.